Snow fell thick and silent over the sleeping city, blanketing everything in white. The streets were nearly empty, save for the occasional passing car whose headlights cut through the haze. Inside a sleek black SUV, warm air hummed through the vents as 6-year-old Lily pressed her small nose to the frosted window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, it's snowing harder now," she chirped. Her father, Alexander Grant, CEO of Grant Enterprises, gave a distracted hum, his phone lighting up with a string of late-night messages. It had been another endless day of meetings, deadlines, and negotiations. His mind was still stuck in boardrooms, not blizzards. But then Lily gasped, a sharp, frightened sound that made him glance up. "Daddy, stop the car. Please," she cried, pointing outside. Alexander frowned, following her gaze toward a dimly lit alley. At first, he saw only shadows. Then, as his eyes adjusted, he caught sight of movement, a small figure crouched in the snow, clutching something close. The woman's hair was tangled, her coat threadbare, her body trembling violently in the cold. "Daddy, her baby is freezing." Lily's voice broke, full of panic. The car rolled to a stop. For a heartbeat, Alexander sat frozen, torn between instinct and disbelief. He had seen poverty before, from the tinted windows of his car, from the safe height of his glass office tower. But this was different. The raw desperation in that woman's eyes, the faint cry of the baby, pierced something deep inside him. Without another thought, he pushed the door open. A rush of icy air hit him, stinging his face. The snow crunched beneath his polished shoes as he hurried toward the woman. "Ma'am," he called softly, but she didn't respond. Her lips were blue, her arms stiff with cold as she tried to shield the baby from the wind. He could barely hear the child's weak, pitiful whimpers. "Please," she managed to whisper, her voice cracking. "My baby." Alexander didn't hesitate. He stripped off his long wool coat and wrapped it around them both, crouching down to lift her carefully into his arms. The tiny baby was ice cold to the touch. "Daddy," Lily called from the car, tears streaking her cheeks. "Help them." "I am, sweetheart," he said, voice tight with emotion. "I am." As the snow continued to fall around them, the powerful CEO carried the fragile mother and her baby toward the car, unaware that this night would change all of their lives forever. Inside the SUV, the warmth felt almost unreal compared to the biting cold outside. The driver glanced back in alarm as Alexander climbed in, cradling the limp woman and her baby. Snowflakes clung to his shoulders, melting into droplets that glistened against his black suit. "Turn the heat up. Now," he ordered sharply, his usual calm voice replaced with urgency. The driver obeyed instantly, and warm air began to fill the car. Lily scooted closer, her eyes huge as she looked at the tiny bundle in her father's arms. The baby's face was pale, lips tinged blue. Without hesitation, she pulled off her pink blanket, the one with the embroidered daisies, and wrapped it around the infant's body. "It's okay, little baby," she whispered softly, her voice trembling but kind. "You'll be warm soon." Alexander glanced at his daughter, so small, yet so brave. A rush of pride and guilt washed over him. He'd given her everything money could buy: toys, vacations, designer dresses. But it was her heart, not his wealth, that made the real difference tonight. The woman stirred weakly, her eyelids fluttering open. Where am I?" she murmured, her voice hoarse. "You're safe," Alexander said gently. "We're taking you to the hospital. Just hold on." She nodded faintly, clutching her baby tighter. "Her name's Hope," she whispered before her strength faded again. "Hope," Lily repeated softly, smiling down at the baby. "That's a beautiful name." As the car sped through the snow-covered streets, Alexander couldn't stop glancing at the rearview mirror. His reflection looked unfamiliar. Not the confident CEO who signed contracts worth millions, but a man terrified that he might lose 2 lives before his eyes. "Daddy," Lily said quietly after a moment. "Do people really sleep outside in the cold?" He swallowed hard. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but they shouldn't have to." Silence filled the car, broken only by the sound of the heater and the faint, fragile breaths of the baby. When the SUV finally pulled up to the hospital's emergency entrance, Alexander was already out the door. He carried the woman and her baby inside, calling for help. Doctors rushed forward, taking them from his arms. As they disappeared behind swinging doors, he felt Lily slip her small hand into his. "Daddy," she whispered, looking up at him. "We did the right thing, didn't we?" He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetheart, the very best thing." And for the first time in years, Alexander Grant, the man who thought he had everything, realized he'd just been reminded what truly mattered. The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, a mix of life and exhaustion. Alexander paced the sterile corridor, his expensive shoes clicking softly against the tiles. Through the frosted window of the emergency room, he could see doctors moving swiftly, nurses murmuring orders, the tiny baby wrapped in heated blankets. Lily sat on a waiting bench, legs swinging, her pink boots barely touching the floor. Her small hands clutched a cup of hot chocolate a nurse had given her. "Will they be okay, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Alexander turned to her, his expression softening. "They will," he said, though a part of him wasn't sure. "The doctors are helping them now." She nodded, staring into the cup as steam curled up like ghostly ribbons. "She looked so cold," she whispered. The baby didn't even cry. He crouched beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You did something very brave tonight, Lily. You saved them. If you hadn't seen them," his voice faltered, the words too heavy to finish. Lily leaned against him, her warmth a reminder of everything he'd almost lost in his pursuit of success. For years, he'd measured his worth in numbers, in headlines and profit margins. But this, his daughter's compassion, the fragile life of a stranger, it made all that feel small. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Grant." A nurse stood at the doorway, smiling gently. "They're stable. The woman and her baby are both going to be fine." Relief hit him so hard he almost had to sit down. "Can we see them?" Lily asked eagerly. The nurse nodded. "Just for a few minutes." Inside the recovery room, the woman looked fragile but peaceful. Her hair had been brushed, her face warm again, though exhaustion lingered in her eyes. The baby, Hope, slept in a clear bassinet beside her, wrapped snugly in Lily's pink blanket. When she saw them, tears welled in the woman's eyes. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice trembling. Alexander shook his head, gesturing toward his daughter. "She did. I just followed her lead." The woman smiled weakly at Lily. "Then your heart saved my Hope." Lily beamed, brushing her fingers over the baby's tiny hand. And in that quiet hospital room, with snow still falling outside, Alexander Grant realized that for the first time in years, he felt something deeper than success. He felt human. 2 days later, the snow had stopped falling, but the world outside the hospital was still draped in white. Inside, the warmth of the recovery ward hummed softly, the steady rhythm of monitors, the muted chatter of nurses, and the occasional newborn's cry echoing down the hall. Alexander stood by the window, watching the snowflakes glitter in the sunlight. His phone buzzed again. Dozens of unread messages, a calendar full of meetings waiting for him. For the first time in years, he didn't care. He silenced the phone and slipped it into his coat pocket. Behind him, Lily sat beside the hospital bed, showing baby Hope one of her storybooks. The little girl's voice was bright and gentle as she traced pictures of castles and stars with her small finger. The woman, Emily, as he had learned, smiled faintly from her pillow, her color returning. "She really likes your daughter," Emily said softly, glancing at Alexander. "She hasn't stopped smiling since you two came back." Alexander smiled, stepping closer. "She's got a way of bringing warmth wherever she goes," he said, his eyes softening as he watched Lily. Emily hesitated, her expression turning uncertain. "I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't stopped," her voice wavered, "we'd have frozen out there." "You don't need to thank me," he replied gently. "Just focus on getting stronger, for her." He nodded toward the sleeping baby. "Do you have somewhere to go once you're discharged?" Her eyes dropped to her hands. "No," she admitted quietly. "We've been moving from shelter to shelter. I had a job once, but after the company shut down," she trailed off, embarrassment in her tone. Alexander was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I run a small outreach foundation under my company's name. We can arrange a place for you and Hope, somewhere warm, safe. And when you're ready, there's a job waiting. Something flexible, so you can take care of her." Emily blinked, disbelief shining through her tears. You'd really do that for us? He nodded. You've already reminded me what real value looks like. Lily looked up, smiling brightly. That means we're friends now, right, Daddy? Alexander chuckled softly. Yes, sweetheart, friends. Emily reached for his hand, her grip trembling but firm. Thank you, she whispered, for giving us a chance. Outside the window, the snow began to melt, dripping from the rooftops like silver threads. For the first time in a long while, Alexander felt the weight in his chest lift, replaced by something gentler, purer. Hope wasn't just the baby's name anymore. It was what they'd all found that night.